There's one mistake professionals make at work that quietly puts them on the layoff list, even when their performance looks solid. And the worst part is, most people don't even realize they're doing it until it's too late. And if you're mid-career, working hard and trying to stay relevant in a market reshaped by AI, restructuring, and layoffs, this is something you need to understand. Because this isn't theory. I've seen this play out inside organizations. And I work with professionals who are shocked when strong performance doesn't protect them. This one mistake could cost you your job. And most people never see it coming. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Thomas Schmidt, and I've spent more than 3 decades as a technology and business executive, including roles as COO, CMO, and head of product, leading teams through multiple industry and technology disruptions. But I also work with mid-career professionals who are trying to understand why the rules they followed so successfully for years have suddenly stopped working. And if this type of content resonates with you, then please consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps immensely in getting this type of content out to more people who need it. Thanks a ton. Okay, let's dig in. There's one mistake professionals make at work that quietly puts them at risk, even when their performance looks great on paper. It doesn't look irresponsible, and it doesn't look lazy, and it doesn't look like someone's asking for trouble. In fact, it looks like the safest way to behave, and that's why it destroys careers. Because in today's job market, where layoffs, AI, restructuring, and doing more with less have become normal, and the most dangerous thing you can be is invisible. And if the people making decisions don't clearly see your impact, you become easy to overlook and easy to sideline in a downturn. Easy to cut. Today, I'm going to show you what that mistake looks like and why smart people fall into it, and how to fix it without becoming fake, political, or loud. Why this matters right now. If you're mid-career, this problem hits harder than people realize. You've built experience, you've accumulated skills, and you've proven you can deliver. So you assume that if you keep doing good work, you'll be safe. But the truth is, the rules that rewarded quiet competence 10 or 15 years ago are not the rules that companies are using today. Because companies are under pressure to move faster, cut costs, automate what they can, and justify every role in terms of visible business value. And when leaders are forced to choose, they don't pick the hardest worker. They pick the person whose value is obvious. And if your value isn't obvious, you're exposed, even if you're talented. The career-killing mistake. Well, without further ado, here's the mistake. Staying invisible and letting your work speak for itself. It sounds noble, it sounds professional. It sounds like I don't need to self-promote. My results will speak for themselves. But here's why this is so flawed. In many workplaces, your results don't speak. They get buried under things like other people's updates, shifting priorities, leadership's short attention span, and constant noise. And invisibility shows up in small ways that feel harmless. Well, you don't volunteer to present. You don't summarize outcomes. You don't share wins because it feels awkward. You avoid speaking up in meetings unless asked. So you assume your manager already knows. This behavior feels safe, but over time, it creates a very dangerous label. Reliable, but replaceable. Why smart people fall into this trap? Let me make this clear. If you do this, it doesn't mean you're incompetent. It means you were trained for a different version of the workplace. Most of us were taught things like doing the work, don't brag, be humble, let quality speak for itself, keep your head down. Early in your career, that often works. You get rewarded for execution. You gain trust by being dependable. You build momentum because you're the person who gets things done. So your brain locks into this rule. If I deliver consistently, I'll be recognized. But as you move mid-career, the evaluation criteria shifts. And at that stage, promotions and protection are less about how well do you execute tasks and more about, do you influence outcomes? Do you lead change? Do others rely on you strategically? Is your value easy to explain in a sentence? And if you don't adjust, you're playing the old game while everyone else has moved on. What actually happens inside companies? Well, here's what most people never see. Promotion decisions and restructure decisions rarely happen in spreadsheets. A leadership team is in a room or on a call, and they're asking questions like, who's driving results? Who's stepping up? Who's making leadership easier? Who do we trust with the next wave of change? And if we had to protect only a few people, who are they? Now, here's the key. In those conversations, leaders don't pull up your entire work story. They rely on memory, perception, and narrative. They remember things like who presented the project, who led the difficult meeting, who simplified a messy issue, who flagged a risk early, and who owns the outcomes. So if you deliver great work, but someone else talked about it, presented it, and framed it, well, they got the mental credit. And when layoffs happen, leaders don't cut based on effort. They cut based on perceived strategic importance and perceived replaceability. So if your name doesn't come up naturally when people discuss impact, you aren't being protected by your performance. That's the brutal reality. How this destroys careers over time. This mistake doesn't usually hurt you immediately. That's why it's so destructive. First, it shows up as, well, you're passed over for a stretch assignment. You're not invited to the most visible projects. And you watch someone else get the opportunity you expected. Then it becomes, you're great where you are. We need you in that role. And you're so dependable. Those sound like compliments, but they can be a cage. Over time, leadership unconsciously categorizes you as operational, support, and execution. Not strategic, not leadership, and not essential. And when budgets tighten, the people who get protected are rarely the ones doing the most. They're the ones whose value is easiest to defend. So if your value requires explanation, you're at risk. The fix, how to stop being invisible. Now, the good news. You don't need to become loud. You don't need to become arrogant. You don't need to turn into a political operator. You need to become strategically visible. Strategic visibility is not self-promotion, by the way. It's making your value legible to those people who make decisions. Here are the 3 shifts. Shift number 1, stop reporting tasks and start reporting outcomes. Most invisible professionals say things like, I finished the analysis, I updated the deck, I completed the project, and I handled the issue. That's task language. Leaders don't protect tasks, they protect outcomes. So instead, translate your work into impact. This reduced turnaround time by 20%. This removed a recurring bottleneck. This lowered risk and prevented rework. This improved conversion and reduced churn. And this saved the team 2 hours a week. Even if you don't have perfect numbers, you can still frame it as this sped up decision making. This reduced confusion for stakeholders. And this improved quality and consistency. You're not bragging. You're making your work visible in the language leadership uses. Shift number 2, create a simple impact narrative. Here's a tool that changes everything. Once a week, write down 3 lines. What I did, why it mattered, and what it improved. Here's an example. What I did, reworked our onboarding flow. Why it mattered. Customers were dropped off early. What it improved, fewer support requests and higher completion. This takes 2 minutes, by the way, and gives you a story you can use in one-on-one meetings, performance reviews, status updates, and meetings where leaders are present. Because the truth is, if you don't supply a narrative for your value, people will create one for you. And it might be solid contributor, not high-impact problem solver. Shift number 3, show up in decision spaces without dominating them. Visibility doesn't mean talking nonstop. It means being present where decisions are shaped. Here are safe professional ways to do that. In meetings, ask one clarifying question that improves the decision. Summarize a complex issue in 1 sentence. Name a risk calmly and propose a mitigation. And connect the discussion to a business outcome. So here are some example phrases. Can I clarify the goal so we don't optimize for the wrong thing? If the outcome we want is speed, here's the trade-off we're making. One risk I see is X. We can reduce it by doing Y. Let me summarize the decision so we're aligned. People remember the person who makes meetings more effective, and this is leadership signaling. How you do this without looking self-promotional. I know what some of you are thinking. Oh, I hate self-promotion. Good, you should. But this isn't about self-promotion. This is professional clarity. Executives and managers are overloaded. They don't have time to track every detail of what everyone does. Your job is to help the organization see what's real. Here's a simple reframe. If you don't communicate your impact, you're not being humble. You're being unclear. And unclear value is a career risk. You can be visible while staying grounded. You can be visible while staying professional. And you can be visible without turning into a show-off. The weekly protection routine. So here's the simplest system to implement starting this week. Every week, do 3 things. 1, capture 1 impact. Write one sentence. This week I improved X. 2. Share one outcome. In a message, a meeting, or a one-on-one, say, quick update. Here's what changed and why it matters. 3. Create one visible moment. Ask one good question or contribute one useful insight in a group setting. That's it. This is not a big-time commitment, but over months, it changes your internal reputation. It makes you easier to advocate for. And in a risky job market, being easy to advocate for is protection. And here's the new rule of work. In today's economy, you can't rely on your work to speak for itself. You have to make your work understandable to the people who decide who gets promoted, who gets protected, and who gets cut. You don't need to be louder. You need to be clearer, because staying invisible doesn't just slow your career. It makes your career fragile. And you deserve better than hoping someone notices. So here's a quick question for you. Have you ever been passed over or overlooked, even though you were doing great work? If so, drop yes in the comments. And if you want, tell me what happened. I read every reply. And if you want more practical strategies to stay relevant, protected, and competitive in today's job market, don't forget to subscribe, because the rules are changing fast. Until next time, take care, be kind to yourself, and keep leaning into what makes you strong. And I'll see you in the next one.